The U.S. Army's at a crossroads as the Pentagon is reorienting itself to fight a capable great power opponent after nearly 2 decades focused on counterinsurgency conflicts. Russia poses a traditional land power challenge for the U.S. Army with its large mechanized formations threatening the Baltics, as well as formidable long-range ballistic missiles, artillery, and surface-to-air missiles. By contrast, a hypothetical conflict with China would focus on control of the sea and airspace over the Pacific Ocean. To remain relevant, the Army would need to deploy long-range, anti-ship capable missiles and helicopters to remote islands, allied nations like Japan and South Korea, and even onto the decks of U.S. Navy ships. Almost all the Army's major land warfare systems entered service in the 1980s or earlier. 5 ambitious programs to replace aging armored vehicles, artillery, and helicopters consumed $30 billion, only to fail spectacularly. Thus, in 2017, the Army formed 8 cross-function teams led by brigadier generals to rapidly, cost-efficiently develop a new generation of hardware. These far-reaching modernization initiatives are collectively called the Big Six. Number 1. Long-range precision fire artillery. The U.S. Army was famed for its lavish, rapid, and accurate use of artillery support during World War II. However, in recent conflicts, the U.S. military has increasingly relied on airstrikes using precision weapons over artillery brigades. But on-call air support would be far from given when facing a peer enemy possessing formidable air defenses. In fact, long-range missile and artillery strikes might be needed to destroy air defenses, kicking in the door for air power. Thus, the Army's top priority is long-range precision fire, a half-dozen projects seeking to enable accurate ground-launched strikes against targets dozens or hundreds of miles away. To begin with, the Army seeks to further upgrade its tank-like 1960s-era M109 Paladin self-propelled howitzers with long-barreled extend-range cannon-boosting regular attack range to 43 miles, and possibly even ramjet-assisted shells extending range to 81 miles. The artillery branch's other mainstay, the truck-based M270 and smaller M142, multiple rocket launcher systems will receive extended-range rockets, doubling reach from 93 miles. Moreover, their capability to launch a single large 180-mile range Attack-MS tactical missile will be replaced with 2 smaller precision strike missiles with a range of 310 miles that can hit moving targets, like ships. Following the killing of the INF Treaty, the Army furthermore is developing 2 even longer-reaching weapons. A hypersonic missile with a range of 1,499 miles, which could prove extremely difficult to defend against and boast deadly anti-ship capabilities, and a gigantic long-range strategic cannon supposedly boasting a range of 1,000 miles. Number 2. Next-generation combat vehicle armor. The Army's second priority is to replace its increasingly vulnerable and underpowered M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. In 2018, the Army decided to proceed with improving the Bradley's powertrain but canceling replacement of its turret. Instead, it seeks an optionally manned fighting vehicle, OMFV, capable of carrying larger squads. A 30 to 50 mm automatic cannon, the Bradley, has a 25 mm gun and new missiles and active protection systems. Current competitors include the Raytheon Rheinmetall Lynx, the General Dynamics Griffin III, and the BAE CV-90 Mark IV. The separate Mobile Protected Firepower program seeks a fast and air-transportable light tank. Currently, a dozen 105mm gun-equipped M8 Bufords with scalable armor are set to compete versus Griffin II tanks armed with 120mm guns. The Army has also begun procuring turretless Bradleys to serve as armored multi-purpose vehicles, replacing old M113 APCs in support roles, such as combat engineering, utility transport, ambulance duty, command post, and mortar carrying. And some of its wheeled Stryker APCS are receiving Dragon turrets with 30mm cannons and Javelin anti-tank missiles to give the lighter vehicles a fighting chance versus enemy mechanized forces. The Army is also installing Trophy and Iron Fist active protection systems on Abrams and Bradley tanks. These detect incoming missiles and jam or shoot them down before impact. As long-range anti-tank missiles have destroyed hundreds of tanks in Middle Eastern wars, including Saudi-operated Abrams, ABS could significantly improve survivability. Number 3. Future Vertical Lift Aviation. Helicopters are essential for battlefield and operational mobility. However, they're also expensive, relatively slow at 150 to 200 miles per hour, short-ranged, and vulnerable to enemy fire. The Army is looking ahead to a radical new Future Vertical Lift system to eventually replace its over 2,000 Black Hawk medium transport helicopters and its heavily armed and armored Apache gunships. Two innovative flying prototypes are competing. The Bell V-280 Valor is a tilt-rotor aircraft. It can rotate its engines from a helicopter to an airplane-like configuration. The likely more complex and expensive Valor would boast greater speed at 320 miles per hour and range. The Sikorsky SB-1 Defiant is a compound helicopter with two counter-rotating blades atop each other and pusher rotor. The Defiant likely is better at helicopter-style low-speed maneuvers at the expense of speed and fuel efficiency. The Army also retired its last OH-58 Scout helicopters in 2015, only to discover that Apache gunships were a poor replacement. As a result, the Army is searching for an agile Scout helicopter separately from FVL. Number 4. Network. The Army would like a brand new, unified, field-deployable command, control, communication, and intelligence C3I network tying together its land warfare systems. The last attempt to field such a network, called WIN-T, was canceled after $6 billion in spending due to its vulnerability to electronic and cyber warfare. In 2014, the Army observed how Russia forces extensively jammed, hacked, and geolocated Ukrainian command and control nodes and even targeted them with lethal attacks. The Army intends to buy as much of the software off the shelf as possible to avoid spending years and dollars building a new system from the ground up. The new network needs to be standardized yet modular, transportable, and cyber-secure. A separate Assured Position, Navigation, and Timing team is developing redundant navigational aids so that ground forces smoothly function under GPS-denied circumstances, particularly by using ground or air-deployed pseudo-satellites. Number 5. Air and Missile Defense. In the last half-century, air supremacy, courtesy of the U.S. Air Force, has reduced the demands on the Army's ground-based air defenses, which have been heavily downsized. However, new threats posed by swarming drone attacks and proliferating cruise and ballistic missiles have made rebuilding their air defense branch a huge priority. The Army is currently focusing on maneuver short-range air defense vehicles, accompanying frontline troops to shoot down low-altitude threats. The Army plans to field 8x8 Strykers armed with Stinger and Hellfire missiles, anti-drone jammers, and 30mm cannons. It's also interim procuring Israeli Iron Dome missile systems, the munitions from which may eventually be adapted to multi-mission launcher. The Army is also developing a vehicle-mounted 100-kilowatt laser that could be used to cost-efficiently burn drones out of the sky. For longer-range air defense, rather than develop new missiles, the Army is spending billions to improve its existing Patriot and THAADS systems by tying together their dispersed radars and fire control systems into an integrated air and missile defense battle command system (IBCS) network. Number 6. Soldier lethality. Close combat infantrymen account for only 4% of the Army's personnel, but have suffered 90% of the casualties in conflicts since 2001. The Soldier Lethality Initiative is divided in two teams. One focuses on improving human factors, using more realistic training simulators, and retaining experienced NCOs and officers through better perks and incentives. The other team plans to procure next-generation assault rifles and light machine guns, likely using the 6.5mm Creedmoor round, which is deemed to have superior penetrating power versus body armor. The Army also is devising an infantry heads-up display with integrated and improved night vision, tactical data, and targeting crosshairs.